There's no doubt that the last 20 months have been taxing for everyone. The COVID-19 pandemic has seemed to linger on for far longer than most expected, causing unending grief and anxiety. Nearly every industry, from hospitality to healthcare, has been affected in some way. For educators, it's been a roller coaster ride from one day to the next. A teacher's role is not only to teach, but to be a leader, a listener, and often a caretaker. Add on top of this working in an environment where the hours are long, the work is unending, and COVID protocols are still evolving.
Administrators and teachers are incredibly stressed right now, unfortunately. There are a lot of different pressures and kind of ever-changing demands.
That's Dr. Olga Acosta-Price, an associate professor at the Milken Institute School of Public Health at George Washington University. She's also the director of the Center for Health and Health Care in Schools. Price works with hundreds of public schools in Washington, D.C., and says that for many educators, this year has been more challenging than last. With almost all districts back to in-person schooling, teachers are trying to get their classes caught up from the learning lags of 2020 and are more cognizant of students' mental health.
It does require a lot to be present and to be there for your students so regularly, especially given that kids are coming in with heightened and greater emotional demands, physical demands, things going on at home, in their community, that has even intensified the need for those spaces in school.
But as teachers take on yet another added role, who's looking out for them? Price argues that responsibilities should be more evenly spread out. One of these being an adequate number of on-site school counselors and psychologists for students. There also needs to be a bigger focus on better mental health and self-care resources for teachers.
All the things that we really emphasize with students, that we really also do the same thing and create the same level of support for the teachers and the staff. I think that we have to be very mindful that teachers and administrators themselves have also experienced a great deal of loss, of anxiety, of maybe illness, financial stressors, disruptions of all types, not just in their jobs and in performing their jobs, but in other elements of their life. Many of them also have their own children or their own families or their own parents that they're helping to care for.
In fact, thousands of educators have resigned or retired during the pandemic from the added stress and uncertainty. Currently, across the country, many schools are facing widespread teacher shortages, especially in Texas, Tennessee, and New Jersey, according to U.S. News & World Report. Many education experts believe that one way to counter these dwindling numbers is for leaders in schools to provide better support to teachers by truly listening to what they need both in and out of the classroom.
My personal opinion is that leadership is top-down and that reflects the attitude and the policies of the leader.
That's Sue Gartner, the director of Trinity Church Nursery School in Wilmette, Illinois. TCNS serves children ages 2 years old through kindergarten. Gartner says that last school year was very challenging for her staff, but they managed to get through it together.
What I consistently try to stress to my staff is that we are in the business of supporting families, not just the children, but families. And so that means that we and I am in the business of supporting the staff and their families. And if they need time off, if they need to spend time with a family, if they're not feeling well, or if they have a wonderful reason to celebrate and go out of town, then it is my job to make sure that the class is staffed and we have an appropriate sub, and that I do all I can to support my staff families. And in doing so, it's a happy place. The teachers feel valued. They feel respected. In my opinion, it starts with leadership, and it starts with valuing and respecting your staff and giving them everything they need to do an outstanding job.
Gardner agrees that this is not the current reality for every educator in America. Some teachers are barely supported or listened to at their schools and are burnt out by the never-ending uphill battle they're facing during the pandemic. She believes that under normal circumstances, teaching is a profession that requires grit and patience.
Teaching is really a calling. Nobody ever said, I'm going to be a teacher and make a whole lot of money. Nobody does this job for the money. They do it out of a sense of wanting to help children, wanting to make a difference in this world.
It's well known that teaching is a very draining job. One silver lining to the pandemic is that it's put a limelight on the importance of mental health. Price says that there's no reason that this support shouldn't extend into people's workplaces as well.
You want it to be an environment where you're doing emotional check-ins with your staff during faculty meeting, during staff meeting, and normalizing that it's okay to find out how people are doing emotionally, and then have a source where when you're worried about someone or about yourself, that you know where you can go to seek more help, and that becomes an open sort of that referral process, or those processes become very kind of well-known and well understood and established, and not something to be stigmatized. I think having processes where if somebody is struggling and they need an adjustment to their schedule or they need time off, that there's a way to do so that doesn't jeopardize one's job.
Price also adds that designated mental health days can be useful to teachers who are feeling like they need to step back and take a moment.
Again, as a way to really normalize that there are just going to be times when, taking a day or two off can do a great deal to allow one to decompress or to come back to center. And again, those are the kinds of things that I know some districts are implementing.
Gartner says that TCNS does not have designated mental health days, but she's very generous with paid time off and understands if her teachers need to take a day or two to recharge.
What I tell them from the get-go is, I never want to turn you into a liar. Do not tell me you're sick if you're not sick. Just use your days for whatever you want. They are your days. So I know teachers take them off to meet friends for lunch or to go downtown or meet their husband or just to hang out at home. We have a professional development day where we all get together and support each other and engage in workshops. And I think that's very helpful, but I believe my teachers know, I hope they know, that if they need time off, they don't have to explain it to me why.
At the end of the day, teachers are a vital and valued part of each and every community across the country. Without their dedication, many people would not be where they are today. In order for them to continue to inspire the brightest minds of tomorrow, it's important that we prioritize their mental health today. To find out more about this topic and our guests, Dr. Olga Acosta-Price and Sue Gartner, visit viewpointsradio.org. This segment was written and produced by Amira Zaveri. I'm Gary Price.
Welcome to today's Book Minute, brought to you by booktrib.com, the leading source of book news and reviews. Living in Color is the extraordinary true story of the last 6 months of the life of Margot Murphy after a 9-year battle with cancer, written by her husband, businessman Mike Murphy. It is a riveting inside look at a love story for the ages, one that men and women dream of, but may never experience. The book also provides an unflinching look at the process of dying and how it is possible to die beautifully and to die well. Margot is able to find peace before her last breath. Every family that has been touched with cancer will identify with the scenes in the story, masterfully written like a novel. Every human who longs to love and be loved, to live well and to die well, will be greatly enriched by the story's lessons and deep wisdom. Living in Color is available at bookstores and your favorite sources for books everywhere.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows. And find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.
Coming up on Viewpoints.
We know food is so important, not only to feed our bodies, but to feed our souls and feed our spirits.
The cost of rising food prices as the holidays quickly approach. Then,
my grandmother was always preparing stews and soups, and there was always rice puffing away in our rice cooker.
The familiar feel of Korean fare. I'm Marty Peterson.
and I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.